lifestyle designers, this is Zach here with secretsoflongevity.com. I'm doing a bit of a different video today. I'm doing sort of a longer video that I'm going to reference in the future, both from my website, from articles I put out, as well as from future videos just to my subscribers like you guys, which you can come and see, and I'll link back to this on many occasions. So this is going to be sort of a primer on a type of energy work that I myself have used for many years. I've gone through periods of using it fairly infrequently, and just recently I started using it on a every other day basis. I would do it every day, except I do have other things I'm doing, and one can only realistically put aside so much time every day for exercise, internal exercise work like meditation, etc., and all the sort of self-care stuff that we're so interested in doing in the field of alternative health, diet, nutrition, and even energy work. So this style is called New Energy Ways. I take no credit for it. I give all the credit obviously to Robert Bruce, who developed it. It's obviously being based on his own experiences throughout his life and his work that he's read and researched. So if you want to learn more about that, I definitely would recommend checking out his site, which I've got linked below. It's astraldynamics.com. Learn about the history of him and sort of the different things that he recommends. What it's best used for is anyone that sort of has trouble understanding and having the sensations of energy awareness or energy flow or energy movement in their body. So while a lot of my videos tend to be on the side of focusing on diet and nutrition, this is just as much emphasized in my own life as being an important factor to keep sort of a mental and emotional and spiritual health in check. So I do various types of exercises which I've shared in the past, like styles of meditation, and I've done martial arts and other types of internal work in the past as well. And this style of energy work can lend itself perfectly to anything you're doing, whether it's any style of martial art, both internal and external. Both internal and external martial arts become similar the longer you do them, because the idea of internal arts like Tai Chi, Bagua, Xingyi, they start using internal imagery and internal movement sensations and forms to bring about external power in terms of a self-defense application, whereas sort of what are known as hard styles of martial arts or external, they start with a physical movement like a punch, but then as you get better and better at it, you start getting more able to make your whole body move as one unit and direct that power and that source of force from inside of you. And it's not so much of just a movement of someone punching. Someone could punch in the same way with the same movement as someone who's developed the internal power, but the person that's punching with the internal power is going to have their whole body move in such a way through internal imagery compounded over many years of practice that is going to result in a much more forceful and devastating blow. So, without getting too off topic, internal martial arts, yoga, qigong, any sort of occult studies into astral projection, and any sort of energy work, this is going to lend itself very well to any of these and can help develop your ability to sense these things and clear away blockages in your own mental, emotional, astral, spiritual bodies, however you want to divide up and categorize those things. There is this aspect to ourselves that is not physical that we can work on and develop to become happier, healthier, and in many cases live longer, because you're not having these negative parts of yourself that have been either taken on as injuries, like personal injuries, emotional, mental injuries, psychic injuries. And these do drain us from day to day, whether it's through interactions with other people or just being with ourselves when we can't totally sit comfortably with ourselves. So the premise of this is that New Energy Ways helps you to focus, instead of working with visualization, which a lot of people are familiar with, and a large number of people have trouble doing because they're not visually based. So you might have heard of people being more audio learners, some people are hands-on learners, some people are visual learners. And to a certain extent we all have these aspects within ourselves and we can develop them, but if you already have a very highly developed side of yourself, it can be difficult to learn that other way. And if you're, for instance, in a yoga class and the teacher's telling you to imagine white light inside your body somewhere, just to throw an example out there, and you're not able to imagine that or see that within yourself where that's supposed to be located, then this is something that can help you get the results that that would give you by skipping that visualization step. You can still visualize, and you can visualize along with the tactualization, we can call it. So it's imagining a feeling. And then you're still going to get the same results. So the tactualization is something that everyone can do, which is what Robert emphasizes as being optimal for most people to develop themselves and develop their energy body. Again, I want to give a quick disclaimer. This is not my work. This is his work. He does offer all these instructions free on his site, Astral Dynamics. And if you need help with anything in regards to this, you have to go over there. There's a free forum. It's a great forum I've been part of for a long time, that you can ask questions about various things on there. Spiritual matters, energy work matters. There's a number of categories. It's a great, very friendly community. And I'll just show you quickly the books I have of his here that you might want to check out again if you want more information. This first one is Energy Work, is simply called, and that's probably the best for specifically this sort of overview I'm giving, but it gets way more in depth than this as to how to work with this energy work. And the other three, which I got prior to that one, that's the most recent book of his that I'm aware of. I think this was his first book, which was Astral Dynamics. It's a very thick book, all about astral projection. Both his experiences, sort of a primer on how to do it if you're interested in pursuing that, and just a whole tons and tons of information on sort of occult things that of that nature related to astral projection. So occult just simply means hidden. It's not something that's evil by any means. It's looks into lucid dreaming and the connection between obviously astral projection and lucid dreaming. And then this other book is called Mastering Astral Projection. It's a 90-day guide if that is your goal to astral project. It's similar in sense to Astral Dynamics, except it's much more in depth into how to get to the point of being able to successfully astral project and develop that ability, because while that book has tons of information and is highly recommended for anyone looking to explore that practice, this is much more practical in terms of actually developing the ability if you already know a lot about it. But of course they go great hand in hand. And the last one here is Practical Psychic Self-Defense. This was very critical for myself at one time in my life, and I'm not going to get too much into it. You can always check it out yourself if that's something you're interested in. I don't want to get too esoteric for some people. They might not understand where I'm coming from, but it is something I've been a part of for a long time, and that's why I wanted to share this with you today. So new, or New Energy Ways as it stands for, is working with sensations and what we could call tactualization, almost like visualization, but with the tactile imagery instead of the visual. And the basic way of understanding it is when you scan your awareness in the form of something. So say you imagined the feeling of a soft brush that you had in your hand, and you held out your hand, and maybe we could do the back of the hand. You imagine that you had a paintbrush and you're brushing the back of your hand just so that you felt the bristles going over the back of it. Okay, so I wanted to get a brush for this demonstration, and I didn't have a paintbrush, but it's my girlfriend's something from makeup. I'm not sure exactly what, but it'll suit this fine. So if you imagine that, or if you actually get an actual brush and do this so that you feel what it feels like to brush the back of your hand, and then you set the brush down and you just imagine that you're holding that. You don't have to visualize it, you just know that you're holding it. And remember that feeling of the soft bristles going across your hand. And then you just imagine the feeling of that as you move your hand back and forth. And you can just feel that sensation. It's not going to feel identical, obviously, but it's going to feel like awareness, almost like a flashlight of awareness. That's a visual example, but it's going to be like that feeling, a little less visceral, but you're going to sort of have an awareness in that area as you imagine that you're brushing over that area. So the books and his site goes into much more detail. I'm going to skip ahead to where you would take this to. If you take that same concept of imagining a sensation, you can work with all sorts of sensations, and you can work with them anywhere on your body. So you could brush any part of the surface of your body and get that sensation going. And generally speaking, areas of less awareness, so say I was moving over my solar plexus, you might not be able to see that, but imagine that you were brushing over your solar plexus, and you had a little area that you didn't actually feel as intensely as, say, you did over on the side of your body as you were brushing across. then that would indicate that there's some degree of blockage, whether it's emotional, mental, whatever's causing there to be an actual something going on in that area of some aspect of your being. So if you imagine now a sphere, you could imagine a ball of energy, or you could just imagine a sphere. It doesn't have to be imagined as energy. You don't have to visualize it, you just imagine that it's there, that you know tactually that it's there, and it's able to move through your body, yet you still feel it. So if you imagine that ball, maybe about this size, and you have your hand here, we'll just use one finger now. Actually, let's shrink it down to about this size in our imagination. We just imagine this ball, and you can do this with me at your computer as you're watching this. Imagine that this little ball, maybe like a golf ball size, is scanning over your finger and going up to the first knuckle here, and then back. And as that little ball of energy goes back and forth, you feel awareness, and really feels it deep in the sort of center of the bone of your finger, and you try and feel it throughout your finger. So it's a scanning of awareness using an image of a ball, or you could use anything really. Again, the books in some cases go into more detail, but the most basic tool is just simply a sphere of energy that you're tactualizing or visualizing if you're more prone to be able to work with visualizations better. But with a visualization you can still work on getting that tactual feeling, that visceral sort of tingling that will come from working on any area of your body. So as you scan back and forth, if your finger's in good health, you should be feeling sort of a light awareness. Now if you're standing or sitting here doing this, you're only going to get it so aware, whereas the ideal way to do this is obviously lying down, or perhaps the best way is in an inclining chair so you're not completely flat, because when we're completely flat we start to go into imagining that we're about to fall asleep, and we generally will, especially if we're doing something very relaxing, such as this type of energy work. And it helps to keep these things dissociated from each other when you're doing energy work or when you're sleeping. Otherwise, when you go to sleep, you're probably going to start doing some energy work, and you might, if you're not wanting to do that, it could be disruptive to your sleep in the sense of getting you more enlivened and not able to fall asleep, as is the case with myself. But it does help some people get to sleep, which can be used in that way. But back to the finger, if we keep working with that image and that sensation, we could then imagine a bigger ball, and we could make it scan up and down our arm. And if you're lying down, these are going to be more visceral. You're going to have more of an ability to be aware of these sensations, and you can get more in depth to anywhere where there might be blockages. And generally, as people get older in their years, they're obviously going to accrue various types of injuries, whether it's from work, sports, or whatever. And actually what I broke my wrist, I think I was 15 or so, maybe 14. It was my first time snowboarding and my last. And I broke my wrist out that day. Just a green stick fracture. I actually landed on it backwards like that. And I had a cast on for a month. But even after that, for quite a while, I had a dull ache in that area. So at the time I'd been working with this energy work, so I really went and worked on my arm quite regularly and with a lot of focus on that area. I was doing the whole body, but I was specifically working on that area at the end of my sessions. And the pain actually got more intense at times. And my personal thoughts on this is that when we injure any part of our body, whether it's a tiny little paper cut to a big bone break or a big gash in our arm or somewhere in our body, or even a surgery, you could say the energy body. If you want a more scientific term, you could say the nerve awareness starts to shrink back from that area. The paramagnetism starts to shrink back from that area, and it's sort of more in a disease state. I mean, it's not a disease per se, but it's an area of the body that has less flow of your tactual awareness to it. So in my case, because I had that break and it was a painful experience, my body retracted its awareness of that area, and to a certain extent that limits circulation, that limits the flow of nutrients and other things to that area, and it's going to be less able to heal optimally. So through this energy work I was getting sort of like these needle-sharp pains. It was never obviously as intense as when I first broke it, but this was my energy body starting to move back into that area after a certain period of time. And actually one specific experience where it was like a very intense sort of tolerable pain. It wasn't so painful in the sense that I couldn't tolerate it. It was just like my body was remembering and moving back into that area that had been injured, And because it was fully feeling where I'd injured myself, I was able to fully heal. And so you can't necessarily fully heal from something unless you really put your full awareness into that area so that it can completely dissolve away. And so at this point I can do handstands and other things, whereas for a while I wasn't able to do yoga on that arm. Anything that involved, like even downward dog, was painful. But now I can do like a handstand up against a wall or anything without actually hurting that specific area of my wrist. So that's just an example of my own personal physical result from that. There's tons of testimonials online, again on Robert's site, Astral Dynamics, if you want to learn more about what's possible with it. I think it plays big roles in emotional and mental health. If you're still working with any of that, I'm not going to say it's a cure, obviously, but in some cases these things, you have a very sense of low energy, and obviously by moving energy and clearing out blockages in the energy body and emotional and spiritual bodies, we can begin to reinvigorate ourselves to be able to sustain more vitality. Where this can go, if you become a regular user of it, is that once you become very good at working with your limbs, and it is recommended to work first on the appendages like the fingers, toes, feet, hands, arms, legs, and then once you start working in the whole torso, you're getting into some very large and sensitive energy centers. So in some traditions they call them chakras. In Chinese system there's the dantians. These are actually technically different energy systems in the body. And again, check out Robert Bruce's work if you want to see his take on these things. But basically everywhere on the whole torso and head you're going to have more major energy systems, and that have specific attributes to emotional states, spiritual states, and different things going on in our body. So a lot of the deeper work does happen in this whole area of the body, and that's something that you can get to. And if you're going to be doing that, I recommend, again, looking into the website, getting some of his books, or looking at the other material online. But you would imagine, again, like this sphere, and if you're moving it through your arm, you're going up, down the other arm, you could do like all sorts of different patterns and movements with these imagined shapes. So if you're moving a sphere around, you're going to be working on going through the chest here. It's going to be opening up the chest and lungs. You can be working with the chakras specifically. If you're moving it from, say if we're working on the heart, we can imagine the sphere going through our chest and coming out the back, and then going through and out the front again. When you're working with these larger energy centers, as compared to the smaller ones in the arms and legs, you're going to encounter sort of more deeper things that are going on. Again, these emotional issues, these can often exist in the upper chakras that we want to work on very gently, and again, I highly recommend guidance in the form of at least reading the material. I keep repeating that just because I don't want anyone getting into too much of an issue out there. But again, when you do bring up these things, they're coming up and you do need to face them, and it's not that that's a bad thing. This is clearing them out and facing our inner hurt parts of ourselves, which we can begin to heal with our own intent through this energy work and clearing out these blockages. And literally, if they sometimes appear as visualizations or feelings in the body, we just work on having the intention of love and clearing those out and breaking them and dispersing them. You can imagine that this negative energy is draining into the ground, being transmuted into the earth into harmless, neutral energies, or you can have whatever visualization or tactualization works for you in terms of dealing with that excess negativity that may come up. So again, I want to just go over the keys to this type of energy work is focusing on the tactile awareness, the feeling, and there's literally stuck emotions throughout our body. If we're the type of person that has, you know, a regular type of lifestyle, or we're coming from that, or we're just in the world today, we're going to be experiencing emotional stressors in a variety of forms. If we've had traumatic experiences in our past, these can be built up in the body to a greater degree. And it takes time and patience to work with these, and I think it should be a part of everyone's practices, whether they're engaged in physical exercise or yoga or whatever, to work on these aspects of ourselves, because this is part of dealing with the stuff that we're all carrying and bringing it to the light and healing it and dispersing it in the end. And that allows us to become who we truly intend to be in this world. And it's part of a path of achieving greater health and enlightenment and happiness and fulfillment. And who doesn't want that? And you can obviously see the connection that that would have to things like longevity, which I talk about mostly on my channel. So this was just a primer just on the basics of this type of energy work. I might make videos on chakras in the future, on other things like a microcosmic orbit, or other things that might refer to this video, and this is just the foundation that I want to put out there and get people interested in this. And if you're the type of person that's just set on one thing, like you're really focused on diet and maybe even exercise, but you haven't done much in terms of internal work, or you just do internal work and you want to expand upon that, I think this is a great thing that you should check out, and just give it a whirl yourself to see if it gives you much of a sensation in your body. Probably the most sensitive area in the body is the feet, and it's one of the safest areas to work on. So if you happen to be relaxing sometime and you're in a chair, just try imagining again those balls of energy, or whatever image you want to think of that's solid enough that you're going to feel it if you imagine it passing through your feet. And you probably want to do one foot at a time, but you imagine, if this was your foot, you just imagine that ball going through and back and forth. Do that maybe 36 times on each foot, and you'll start to have certain sensations there, and you'll start to feel parts of your body relax. It really sort of grounds you when you work on the feet. If you're doing too much work up high, or trying to raise kundalini or something like that, which I don't recommend just randomly doing, you're going to run into troubles feeling ungrounded, feeling disoriented, etc. Possibly. There's no absolutes, of course, with energy work, but working on the feet is one way to feel really solid and present where you are. And working on the feet is a great way to also show yourself that this is actually giving you really visceral feelings in your body, in your feet, because there's those, what's known as the K1 points for the kidney meridian. It's known as the bubbling spring on sort of the very center of the foot, in behind the ball of the foot. So it's right here is the K1 point, and you're going to feel possibly sensations there. And I recommend doing that if you want to just sort of check this out and feel if there's anything to it. So with that, check out the links below to the Astral Dynamics site. Check out the books. You saw their titles as I held them up, so you can go check them out if you want. And with that, take care and embrace life without limits.